Hey guys, and welcome back to Grace of a Military Child and Life podcast. Life from the perspective of a military family member is way different than a civilian standpoint. Military children and family members give up their hopes and dreams to be able to stand by and support their service member, and it isn't an easy lifestyle for anyone to live. I hope that this podcast is able to help connect the military community and give others just a glimpse into what the military life is like from the perspective of spouses and children. Hi everyone, welcome back to today's episode of Grace of a Military Child and Life. Today I'm here with Marine Corps veteran and spouse, Zarina. So Zarina, thank you for your service and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Grace. This is exciting. Thank you so much.
Yes, absolutely. So what came first, veteran or, service member or spouse?
So service member came first. Joined the Marine Corps back in December 2007, headed over to Japan. I met my husband. We kind of dated for a little bit, but we didn't get married until we came back to the States. So definitely active duty and then spouse.
What was it like? Did you join with at least a thought in the back of your head saying I'm probably going to end up getting married to a service member because that's, typically that's what you see when women join the military. But was that thought in the back of your head? Did you just not care? What was going through your mind at that point?
So that's not really something I thought about. I was sent to my first duty station was Camp Fuji, Japan, really small. So there was only 5 or 6 women with me at the time, and a small unit, 189 Marines. So I didn't really think about marriage at the time. I just thought about, getting my career together. And honestly, I thought I wouldn't end up with the Marine just because I knew what I was going through, being away from home and that sort of thing, and then having to go TAD and deployments. And I knew kind of in the back of my head that that's not what I wanted. So it's kind of ironic that that's who I ended up with.
Yeah, I will always say you can say you want something, or you don't want something. That's what you're going to end up getting in return. You jinx yourself in the long run.
Exactly. That's true. Yeah. Because you don't really think about it. And then, you're dating or you're trying to date each other. And it's like, dude, no, I have a career to worry about. What are you doing? And then, continuing to pursue. And you're like, okay, sure. Why not?
Yeah, what's the worst that can happen?
Exactly.
And here you are with a family and, successful careers as that too.
Yeah, so far. So we have 2 little boys. They're 10 and 5. So my husband and I are still currently active duty. So yeah, so far so good. We're still having fun.
What is it like being active duty and being a spouse? I mean, you're both experiencing it from, different aspects, of course, but what is it like for you?
So for me, I think it almost makes it easier, especially the older that we have gotten, just in the Marine Corps and in our marriage. There's an understanding that we don't need to explain. We do have junior Marines under us. So if something happens, or, I have to work late until 8:00 at night and he has to work early and it's last minute, or, he gets a phone call because one of his Marines are in trouble at 2 a.m.
Right.
I understand that lifestyle because, it's part of my lifestyle as well. So for me, it makes it easy to know, okay, I have to take care of this because, hey, anything can come up. And we share responsibilities with the children and the family. So we understand that things shift. There are some points where I am the primary parent and he's the primary parent. So there's an understanding and an ebb and flow that things could change constantly.
Yeah, you have to find a way to create that balance in the unbalanced and, even try and make it somewhat normal, raising kids in this lifestyle that is not normal, and then having dual military parents it's much less common.
Right. And it's really, for me, it's about priorities. We do a lot of planning.
Yeah.
But again, we get a wrench thrown in our plans, and we're getting ready to PCS overseas, and it's crazy. One day I have to prioritize doing certain things because he's going to be gone for a couple of weeks. So definitely trying to figure out a balance in prioritizing our lives.
Yeah. What is, bringing kids into this been like?
So a lot of people talk about resiliency, right? And it could be a trigger word for some people, but for me, seeing my kids, so my older son is 10 and this PCS will put him in 4 schools in 4 years.
Wow.
It's just about communicating. The first couple of years when he was younger were really easy because he didn't really understand. But once he started to have friends, sleepovers and parties, and it kind of got a little bit difficult. But we try to talk to our children and let them know, especially with this next move overseas, a lot of people don't have the opportunity to, live in different states and be exposed to different things. So it's definitely difficult, but we talk to our kids a lot and they understand. That's part of the job and it's only temporary. How temporary, we don't know, but it's going to end one day.
Yeah, because, growing up, you don't get these experiences like you were saying that, a normal civilian child does not get. Because, who can say that they're going to live in Japan? Who can say that they've lived on both coasts of this country? We military kids are so unique in the different experiences that we have, moving and friendships and, balancing this crazy life, like you said, resiliency, like some people don't like that word. I love that word. Military kids are so resilient. And it goes to show, how adaptive they are. And just, they're younger, it's a little easier. But then as they grow older in this lifestyle, it becomes more challenging. And you'll find kids who don't necessarily enjoy it as much, but you'll find kids who do. And it's so unique to every experience.
It really is. And I think a lot of people there's not enough, in my opinion, credit given to the military child and the military spouse, because for the service member, it is a new place or a new duty station that we're going to, but we kind of, there's a circle of camaraderie, right? And we kind of know a little bit about what to expect. It's like, okay, I'm doing my job here. It's going to be obviously a little bit different. It will take me some time to get used to it. But I almost automatically have friends. I have people I can relate with. And with children and spouses, I think people sometimes forget that it's harder for them to kind of snap into the grind of things when we move so much.
I was actually just talking with someone about that yesterday, because service members, you have, like you said, that camaraderie. You're put straight into a unit and saying, hey, like, this is your group. It might shuffle around a bit, but for the next 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, however long you're here, maybe even 6 months, if that's what it ends up being, this is your group, this is your crew, this is what you can call home base. But for spouses and kids, you really have to be comfortable with putting yourself out there, because if you're not, then that's that.
Yeah, no, that's something that I try to tell people. Yeah, it's hard on us, but it's really, really hard on them.
Yeah. And, everyone looks at the military life, and this is why I like starting the podcast, starting the Big Little program. You look at the military life, and specifically the lives of spouses and kids. Spouses, you look at and say, you signed up for this. You know what you were getting into. I'm sorry. That's what a lot of people say. Right. And then kids, they don't have that. They were born into this lifestyle. They didn't have a choice. And they're just kind of, spouses and kids are kind of left out to dry in some aspects, because, what more is there for them? And, starting this has given me a platform and other people a platform to give recognition to spouses, recognition to kids, because they deserve it, just as much as the service member does. We say we serve too, and it's so true.
It's hard. I hate when people say, you chose this, because as a spouse, especially a young spouse, a lot of, at least Marines, get married really young. And the level of responsibility that a junior Marine has it's almost easier to be married as a young Marine. And as you get older, there's more responsibility because, as you excel in rank, you get a bigger scope of things you're responsible for. So, yeah, maybe the spouse had an understanding, but it constantly changes. And
Right.
I think it's unfair to say this is what you signed up for because you don't really know.
Yeah.
There's, I mean, we could talk about, there's so much, we could talk about you're going to go TAD and you think your spouse is coming home and an injury happens and that changes your life, or deployments, and it's just so much. You're kind of living on the edge because you don't really know anything can happen.
Yeah, and you have to have that mindset of, something's going to change. Like you were saying earlier, you can have, plans A through Z all done, but then, one's going to change and it's going to be a domino effect onto the rest.
Absolutely.
And, the service members don't have control over that. The spouses definitely don't have control over that. The kids
Right.
have zero control. It's what the military says is what goes because you don't have a choice.
Right. And I've also heard from some spouses, once the Marine Corps, or in my case, the Marine Corps, but once service ends, whether you retire, where you get out, the service member has the benefit of still being a veteran. And the spouse is it's kind of back to square one because there's not really a big like veteran spouse community. It's like, okay, well,
Right.
you're no longer affiliated. So it's definitely very difficult being a spouse that's not also a veteran.
Yeah, there's so many organizations out there and companies that specifically search to hire veterans. But once you're a spouse and you're the veteran spouse now, there's no resources out there. There are some. I don't want to say there's none. There are some because I know Chase Bank is one that seeks military spouses, and T-Mobile I've seen is another one. So I do know there are some, but they're few and far in between. They'll probably take an active duty spouse over a veteran spouse any day, because it probably looks better for their numbers, just thinking marketing wise. But whatever the case may be, that title is basically gone for veteran spouses.
Right, right. Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, it's difficult to maneuver, but yeah.
Yeah, this lifestyle, everyone looks at, or a good majority looks at and says, it's sunshines and rainbows. You get to move, you get to, experience all these new places, you get to travel, you get to whatever the case may be, whatever they're seeing from the outside, they see that outside perspective. And it's like, no, take a second, look inside, like listen to somebody's story, say, hey, you've told me all the good. Like if you have a military friend, say, hey, like you've told me all the good, but what's the opposite side of this? What are you struggling with? Why are PCSs so hard? Why are deployments so hard? Because some people are like, whatever, like they're gone for a week, they're gone for a month, but you still have a family to raise. And if you're dual service, like you're saying, like it makes it more challenging because you still have a busy schedule while your husband's gone, or vice versa, and you have to manage the kids and everything else.
Right. And it's especially in the age of social media, people are not necessarily, I think we're coming out more with people sharing, the bad side of their lives. But most of the time, people see, a picture of you and your family, and it's like, oh my God, you guys are relationship goals. I love everything. And it's like, you've seen like 2 seconds of a very crazy, chaotic. Don't get me wrong, there's great times in there as well, but you can't make an assumption of our whole life based on a video, a post, a reel. So, yeah, I think that's a great point that you made is we can't really judge people because we don't know what they have going on.
Right. Like social media is seriously the highlight reel of people's lives. And if they don't share, the little bad things that happen along the way, then you're just going to assume that their life is the highlight, that they have everything they could ever need, that they're living the best life. But in that, there's always struggle. There's always something in your day that could be made a bad day.
Absolutely.
I commend them because in a sense they are finding the good things in every day. But at this same point, you know, when you're just constantly sharing those good things, people are going to think that's because that's all they know.
Right, right.
Going back to an infant, all they see is all they know. If you cover the toy with a blanket, that they think that the toy is gone, you know?
Right.
And so we don't see the bad, so we don't think it even exists.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah. I'm not big on social media. I'm starting to now. It's really, really hard to manage.
Yeah, I'm
But
sure.
I'm not a fan of, oh my gosh, your relationship goals or your family goals. It's like, hold on. Like, I really like this picture and we look good. So I posted it. Just like it and move on. Yeah. Right.
Give it a little heart. Move along.
Right. It's not that deep.
No, because it probably took 10 minutes to get everyone in this photo perfectly angled. Yeah.
Yes,
it took a lot more than you actually know that went into this.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So that's
yeah, and it's definitely that aspect of military families because like you see moving boxes and you see these cute little staged photo shoots of, you know, announcing your next duty station. And while I love that, and if I'm a military spouse one day, you can definitely catch me doing that. But, you know, it takes more. You actually have to, the emotional process of packing up your entire life into boxes, closing them, shipping them even overseas and saying, I hope to see you in 6 months.
Couple months, yeah.
I hope that you don't get lost. You know, it's mentally exhausting.
It really is. And I think for me, I've just started to get more into social media and, you know, taking pictures and documenting things because it's about my kids.
Right.
I don't really have a lot of photos and videos to show them of my experiences when I was a young Marine. So I try to do that now. And like you said, those photo shoots and, hey, you know, we're moving to California, like that's stuff that they're going to want to see and remember as well. So it's not really for the world. It's for us as well, you know, to kind of give us a piece of sanity in this crazy world.
Yeah, because they're going to look back on this and say, well, what did we do? Where did we go? And looking back on pictures, videos, memories are always going to be there, but memories will fade over time, unfortunately.
Right.
And so having pictures, having videos, having the little captions on photos, you know, saying, hey, you know, this is, you know, just like a little pretty picture of a beach we went to while we were stationed here. And, you know, dad was gone, but we did this instead and you were so happy, whatever the case may be.
Right.
You know, being able to do that and say that and put that out there is really something. And a lot of people don't understand, you know, the importance and significance just in that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. For sure.
Yeah. What, you know, you say you're moving overseas. What are like some of the challenges? Have your kids lived overseas before?
So no, my kids have lived in North Carolina and California a couple times. We've been back and forth. So the biggest challenge for my older son is he has a cousin who is 6 months younger than him, who lives about 6 hours away. So we split the summers. My nephews come here for half the summer and my kids go there for half the summer. Holidays, weekends, they are always up here. We're always up there. It's close enough to, you know, be able to plan short notice.
Right.
The biggest thing is, I think my kids now understand we cannot drive to Georgia from Japan.
That's like a 16-hour flight and then some more.
Yeah, there's going to be no driving to Georgia. So I think for me, it's just the hardest thing is adjusting for them, and which we don't know how that's going to go. Everyone's telling me, you know, Japan is great, community's great, but they have just this really strong bond. They talk every night. So that's been the biggest challenge. Everything else is, I think I'm just used to being a Marine. It's like, all right, we got to pack.
Move on.
Exactly. Right. So I'm more so worried about like the kids snapping in and getting settled and not having family close by.
Right. And you mentioned you lived in Japan before. You've been there, but it's so different now, you know, one, because of the the change in time, years go by, everything changes, and then you're adding kids into it. And I'm sure it's not the same as it was when you were there. And it's different if you're mainland Japan versus Okinawa,
Right.
everything has to be taken into consideration when kids are involved.
Right. Absolutely. And yeah, like just being in a different country in itself is different. We've been there, we know kind of what to expect, but that's going to be a culture shock for them. Hopefully, not as bad as we hope. But yeah, it's a change and we just have to see how they interact with that.
Yeah. I can tell you that a lot of military kids that I know and have had on the podcast who have been in Japan, they're the sweetest people ever. So hopefully that just stays the same and holds true. Military kids, I think, are the best anyways. So military families as a whole, but then specifically military kids. I might be biased because I am one, but military kids are amazing.
Yeah, because they adapt pretty quickly to their environments. And Japanese people are just really like humble and sincere, and they respect space. So yeah, that's something that I'm looking forward to. Just experiencing a new culture. Like exposure is important. This is not the only lifestyle that there is. And I think it just gives you an appreciation for people more when you're exposed to different cultures.
Yeah, and Japan has such a lifestyle that is so slow and relaxed. Where here we're just constantly go, go, go.
Right.
And I'm sure having that military connection in Japan is different, and it's still go, go, go. But you're still able to take a step back and live that slow-paced life. And I'm sure your kids will definitely adapt to that slow-paced life as well. At least at some point. Maybe it might be the week before you leave, but either way.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, you never know. And, military kids, BRAT is an acronym: bravery, adaptability. I always forget how that is said.
Yeah.
Tough. T can be changed. Or BR. There we go. Bravery, resilience, adaptability. And then T is tough, tenacious, whatever. There's a couple different variations of it. But
awesome.
Military kids definitely fulfill each of those slots. And honestly, I think the entire military family does. Spouses, service members, veterans, everyone can fulfill each one of those letters, because it's just the way that the military trains the service member and in turn trains the family as well.
Right. Yeah. And unconsciously, the spouse and the kids just kind of have to go along and figure it out as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So the last thing I always like to ask, and it's sometimes the toughest question, but what piece of advice would you give to another military spouse?
Oh, wow. That's I would say try to get involved with your community. Try to build a community.
Yeah.
I'm very big on, having a community, making, having a tribe, being a female Marine, there's been challenges there where having other women around is really, really beneficial. But on the spouse side, same thing, be involved, have a community, go meet at every opportunity you have, go to the unit, go meet the people your spouse works with. Because I think there's a communication barrier sometimes and there's not an understanding. But, if they're having a barbecue or a Christmas party, that's an opportunity to go and meet other spouses and talk, because you find that you have more in common with other people. And when you're by yourself, you're kind of struggling in silence. But when you interact with other people, you find that you have a lot in common, and that, hey, I'm not alone over here. I'm not going crazy. Like, you're crazy. If you're crazy, I'm crazy. Let's be crazy together. But that's the biggest thing I would say is build a community, ask questions, try to be involved, try to volunteer. I know we have family readiness officers that are doing phenomenal work with spouses. There's spouse, work. What is it? When you're trying to help a spouse get a job or just have a day off, they provide daycare. Just get involved. Don't isolate yourself because your spouse is always gone.
Right. And, the pros and cons of social media, but there's always a Facebook group for the base.
Right.
Whether you view that as a great thing or more towards a negative thing, that's up to you. But there's always that out there. There's so many resources to help build that community, because I think the military, especially now, is starting to realize how important that community is for families and for military kids, not just the service members who get that automatic community when they move in.
For sure. And people are really, really happy to help, which for me recently has been surprising with my PCS. I'll send an email, hey, I have a question about housing or schools.
Mm-hmm.
And I will get everything, all the resources, things I didn't even think about. People will email me and call me. And it's like, holy cow, like all I had to do was ask. So even if you're not open to, if you're kind of shy or introverted, people are really willing to help. So sometimes just asking the question, launching the email, launching the comment, leaving a message, that's very helpful as well.
Right. Putting yourself out there is literally going to change the enjoyment of your duty station, literally in the long run. Because if you don't put yourself out there, like you said, people are introverted. Some people are going to have or want that experience to be more introverted. They're not going to want to put themselves out there, and that's okay. But the more you put yourself out there, the more you make friends, the more you build that sense of community, the better it's going to be in the long run. And when you come across those struggles, those deployments, those trainings, you're going to have your tribe who you can call on, because you never know what's going to happen. Murphy's Law is real.
Exactly. Right. And depending on how long your spouse or you stay in the military, you're going to see each other again.
Yeah.
It's amazing how many people I've been in the Marine Corps here 15 years, and it's amazing how many people I have seen at the same duty stations that I was neighbors with there. And now, we live a few miles down the road. So yeah, again, building community, it just constantly grows.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. And, meet civilian people, but make your military connections for sure, because that's really what's going to save you in the long run. Because like you said, you come across people again. Don't burn bridges.
Right. Oh, yeah. For sure.
Well, thank you so much, Zarina, for being on the podcast and sharing what it's like for you being a service member, a spouse, a mom, and everything in between.
Thank you for having me, Gracie. I really love what you're doing with highlighting military kids and military spouses. Like I said, it's something that people don't really put a focus on. So this has been an honor. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Grace of a Military Child and Life. Make sure to set a reminder for every Tuesday to listen to a new episode. You can find us on Instagram and YouTube at Grace of a Military Child and Life. If you have any questions or want to be on the podcast, send a message to one of our social media platforms or email grace.of.a.military.child@gmail.com. See you next week.